So this video is going to be on Eratosthenes. Eratosthenes was a very important Greek scientist and philosopher back in the days of ancient Greece and before all that, the Roman Empire and all that. Now, his most famous experiment he conducted in the year 240 BCE. That BCE is the same thing as BC, and CE is the same thing as AD. It's just scientists use that so that they don't have to use AD and BC, which have religious connotations with them. But anywho, 240 BC, people knew that the Earth was round, obviously, or spherical, and it is spherical, at least mostly spherical. It bulges, however, in the equator, since this Earth is rotating and spinning, and so it sort of gets pulled out, And basically, he wanted to prove, obviously, that the Earth was round, but people knew the Earth was round. He wanted to know how big it is. What is the circumference of the whole Earth? And so he did this in a quite ingenious way. He heard about a city. He was in Egypt at the time, heading the famed Library of Alexandria, which was obviously burnt down in the obviously famous historical event. But he heard of a city called Syene, now called Aswan, in Egypt, which he was in Egypt. Yeah. Anywho, he heard of a story there that there was a well that on the March equinox, there was no shadow. The well had no shadow, and this was because it was within the tropics during that point, and really places during the tropics during the equinox don't have shadows really. So he decided that what he was going to do was he was going to, on the vernal equinox, take a stick and plant it in the ground where he was, in Alexandria, which is a few hundred miles north of Aswan or Syene. And he took that, and he found how long the shadow was. And he also knew the distance, because he had a very professional team of surveyors. Find the distance between both cities, because back then it was a little bit hard. You didn't have satellite photography, you didn't have accurate measurements so much. So he found the approximate distance between both cities, and he found the difference between the shadows. And using that, what he did was using a pi and circumference, and also the distance between the cities. He calculated the circumference of Earth using trigonometry and just those the shadows of those two sticks, and he calculated the circumference of the Earth he was accurate, of course, to within about 1% of error, which was incredibly remarkable for his time. And he existed back way back in the days before even Rome and all Cleopatra and all that. So it was quite remarkable that he did that. And fun fact, later Ptolemy, who was another Greek scientist, he calculated it between two different points, but he had the wrong distance between the 2 points, and so his calculation was a little bit smaller than it should have been. And because of his calculation being a little bit smaller, Ptolemy was a very important Greek scientist, and everybody sort of just took whatever he said as truth, kind of like Aristotle. Of course, Aristotle was not everything he said was true. I mean, have you seen his views on women? Not exactly the fairest crayon in the box, I would say. So, But anywho, Ptolemy saw that it was a smaller Earth. Now, this is actually what the misconception about Christopher Columbus comes from. Christopher Columbus didn't think that the Earth was flat. No. He thought that the Earth was smaller. He was going off of Ptolemy's calculation of the size of the Earth, where everybody at that time had already knew that Ptolemy had gotten it wrong, and we're now using Eratosthenes' nearly correct measurement for the size of and circumference of the Earth. So what he thought was that he could make it all the way around the globe, when in reality, if the Americas were not there, he wouldn't have. He would probably have died, midway through his journey, because he didn't pack enough food. So yeah, that's where that whole misconception about now Columbus was still stupid. Don't get me wrong, but at least he didn't think the Earth was actually flat. But yeah, so I think that'll close it out for now.